And Charles, are you ready?
I am ready, yes.
And the court report, I just want to confirm the court reporter is ready as well.
Yes, I'm ready.
All right, we are live and recording. Tim, we're ready to go.
Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Tim Voss, and I'm the chair of the Historic Conservation Board. I'd like to take a minute to remind everyone of the rules of this proceeding. This proceeding is governed at all times by the rules of procedure, a copy of which is available online. All those planning to testify today, which does not include those solely making arguments, such as attorneys, will be asked to take an oath administered by the board's attorney when they testify. This is a quasi-judicial hearing, and as such, the board reserves the right to deliberate in private. The Ohio Rules of Evidence do not apply to this hearing. However, professional rules of conduct do apply, and candor of the tribunal is required. The board members are citizen volunteers and are not paid for their service. They are treated as public officials under Ohio law, and any attempt to influence them, including but not limited to bribery, intimidation, retaliation, which may include contacting their employer in an attempt to exert influence, is punishable as a crime. All should be aware that this meeting is being recorded. Therefore, please speak clearly to your microphone and state your name and address for the record. In the event of any technical difficulties with the video conferencing technology, I may continue or postpone this hearing at my discretion. All participants providing testimony today must have both camera and audio features turned on in order to participate. With that, we will fully call to order and start with item number 1, 3441 Observatory. Mr. Owen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is an application for a certificate of appropriateness for 3441 Observatory Place, which is in the Hyde Park Observatory Place Historic District. A version of this project has come before the board previously. It was approved back on January 27th, 2020. And at that point, it was a screened-in porch on the rear, and the COA was approved. However, the applicants did not pull any permits, and because of the condition on the approval, that approval did expire after 2 years. So the applicant has reapplied. There are some minor changes from the original proposal, mainly including adding windows and sliding doors rather than screens to the porch to make it a fully enclosed structure. The staircase extending towards the rear has been placed in a different location, and they have added a fireplace to the ground level patio. The screen porch will also be clad in composite lap siding, as well as the staircase rather than the wood panels that were previously proposed. So the footprint of the building is primarily the same as was originally proposed. And you can see the existing rear of the building here and some renderings of the proposed addition. You can see how it is now enclosed with windows and doors with the lap siding on the side and the fireplace below. So as this has been heard before, all the details are in the staff report. So I'll go straight to the recommendation. So staff does recommend approval of the certificate of appropriateness for 3441 Observatory Place for a rear addition for RDA Architects dated April 20th, 2022 and May 10th, 2022, subject to the condition that the building permits must be issued within 2 years or the COA shall expire.
Thank you. Cassandra, I still haven't received your email, so I'm not sure who we have.
Sure. I'm still finishing it. I'll send it to you shortly, but I can share with you the only person we have signed in for item number 1 is the applicant, Greg Schneider.
All right, Mr. Schneider. What would you like to add that Mr. Owen has not told us?
Oh, I don't think I have anything to add other than what's been recommended in the report. I think this is substantially the same as what we submitted before. And
Mr. Schneider, if you're going to elaborate on your comments, I'm going to have to swear you in.
oh, okay.
Do you swear, or could you raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
All right. All right. No, we have nothing further to add to the conversation. We appreciate your consideration of this.
Okay. Questions or comments from the board? Absent that, I will entertain a motion.
Motion that we approve the certificate of appropriateness as laid out by staff.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Ms. McKenzie,
Aye.
Mr. Weiss,
Yes.
Mr. Zelasco,
Aye.
Mr. Sunderman. No, Mr. Sunderman. The chair votes aye. Item
I'm
number-
sorry, I was off. I vote aye.
Okay. Chair votes aye. The item is approved. Item number 213 Wade Street. Mr. Owen,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is an application for a certificate of appropriateness and zoning relief for 213 Wade Street in the Over the Rhine Historic District. The applicant is proposing to create an 8-space surface parking lot on the existing vacant parcels. There are 2 additional spaces that will be provided behind the existing building at 209 Wade Street for a total of 10 spaces. There will be a 6-foot black metal fence and landscaping along the north and south property lines. And the first 10 feet of the access drive off Wade Street will have pavers or scored concrete to break up the appearance of the parking lot. The parking lot is intended to serve the residents of the nearby buildings at 209 and 214 Wade Street. So the applicant does also require zoning relief in the form of a special exception to eliminate the required 3-foot landscaping buffer on the east and west property lines and the 1 required tree planting. The staff does feel that the special exception is justified as the narrow width of the lot does not allow for the full 6 feet of landscaping that would be required when combined on both the east and the west. And there is also no room to plant as a significantly sized tree. So the staff does feel that that is appropriate in the interest of providing the full 10 spaces that will serve the adjacent properties. And with the landscaping, the fencing, and the scored concrete at the entry, staff also feels that this complies with the Over the Rhine conservation guidelines when it comes to parking lots. So staff does recommend approval of the special exception for plans by the Kleinger's Group dated 3/24/22 to allow a surface parking lot with the condition that the 2 parcels shall be merged by a consolidation plat or linked through a restrictive covenant prior to the issuance of the building permits. Staff also recommends approval of the certificate of appropriateness for the 213 Wade Street for the same plans, subject to staff review and approval with the following condition: that the building permits must be issued within 2 years of the decision date or the COA shall expire.
thank you. Cassandra, I still don't have that. Who do we have signed up for item number 2?
Item number 2, we have the owner representative, David Noel.
Yes. Yes.
All right. Anybody else signed up?
No, that is the only person present.
Mr. Noel, do you want to add anything that staff has not told us about the parking lot?
No, nothing more that I can think of. I think everything's been covered. Thank you.
Okay. Questions from the board? I think the exception here on the side lot makes sense. So with that, I will entertain a motion.
Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve both the zoning relief and the certificate of appropriateness as laid out by staff.
Second.
I heard Ms. McKenzie second first, so I have a motion and a second. Ms. McKenzie,
Aye.
Mr. Weiss,
Yes.
Mr. Zelasco,
Aye.
Mr. Sunderman,
Aye.
the chair votes aye. Item number 2, 213 Wade Street is approved. Item number 3, 1886 Madison Road. Mr. Owen,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is an application for 1886 Madison Road in the East Walnut Hills Historic District. It is an existing single-family colonial revival building And on the rear of the property, there is an existing terrace that covers an attached garage as well as a small covered porch addition. So the applicant is proposing to remove the failed concrete slab over the garage, which currently forms the terrace, and replace it with a wood frame floor system. They will retain the stone piers that are existing, and they will also place new brick piers on the terrace that will be taller than the existing to form a code compliant railing. The original stone caps that are currently on the brick pillars will be reinstalled. And they are also proposing to remove the original wood frame covered back porch and pantry and replace it with a lower level garage on the lower level and a first floor screen porch. There'll also be a 3-foot retaining wall and fence built on the north property line. So, staff does feel that this is an appropriate application. There is no zoning relief required, by the way. On the screen, you can see the plans for the existing plans showing the terrace and the small attached porch. With the new plans, the terrace will be in the same footprint, just with a new roof and flooring for the terrace level. It would be also the ceiling of the garage and the new proposed porch that will extend further out than the current proposal or the current deck. This is the existing conditions, and the applicant has provided photos showing the deterioration of this existing porch, and I have those included on the screen. I believe I did forget to include these in the staff report. This was supposed to be Appendix A. So if you were looking for that and couldn't find it, that was not included. So these are the images that were provided. And so generally, while the exterior, the terrace and the garage are not original to the building, they were added at a later date, likely not long after the original construction. However, the repair work that was done in the past to the terrace actually ended up allowing water to be trapped within different layers of concrete on the roof, creating further deterioration. So that does need to be removed and replaced. Staff has no issues with that. And then also, as far as the original rear deck covered porch structure, while it is an original feature, staff would argue that it is not a character defining feature as it is located on the rear of the building. It's not visible from Madison Road, and it is barely visible from any of the side streets, as there are 2 other properties between this building and the streets on either side, and is also screened by vegetation. So that, combined with the deterioration of the existing porch, staff does feel it is appropriate to remove that and rebuild it with a new covered deck that will be sympathetic in design to the rest of the building. So staff, well, as part of that new deck, there will be some alterations to those rear openings. One of the window openings will be converted into a door, and another window opening will be bricked in, but the brick will be set back and it will form a sort of a cabinet in that deck, so that basically the size of the former window opening would be retained. So staff does recommend approval of the certificate of appropriateness for the additions and changes to the property at 1886 Madison Road per plans submitted by the applicant dated 4/21/22, with the condition that the building permits must be issued within 2 years of the decision date, or the COA shall expire.
Thank you. All right. Let's see where I am here. I actually have my sheet now, so who will be speaking on behalf of the applicant?
I will. Damian Billy, the owner, and Margaret
right.
Separate, also the owner.
Okay. Let's get you sworn in.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
All right. What would you like to add that Mr. Owen has not told us?
The one correction to the staff report is that there are 3 masonry openings off the current kitchen. 2 of them are doors and 1 is a window. None of the masonry openings will be modified. They will be reversible if needed in the future. It's just that the door that leads to the pantry will now be the door that leads to the screen porch. So we're just switching door locations, but the masonry openings will be the same. So there's nothing to change in the future. And secondly, we've owned this home for 33 years. The kids are finally out of the house. It's time for us to do something for ourselves.
All right. Any questions or comments from the board? All right, then I will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve the certificate of appropriateness as laid out by staff.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Ms. McKenzie,
Aye.
Mr. Weiss,
Aye.
Mr. Zelasco,
Aye.
Mr. Sunderman.
Aye.
The chair votes aye. Item number 3, 1886 Madison Road is approved. Item number 4, 2035 Dunlop Street. Mr. Owen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is 2035 Dunlap Street, which is located in the Over the Rhine Historic District. The applicant is requesting a certificate of appropriateness for a recessed roof deck along the front roof slope, as well as a 3rd-story addition and general rehabilitation of the interior of the building. There's no zoning relief required as part of this request. It's currently a 2-family building, and the intent is to remain a 2-family building, but the building will be updated entirely. The applicant is proposing exterior changes that would include that roof deck on the front roof slope, as well as a 3rd-story addition. So you can see the property at this corner of Stark and Dunlap. The roof deck will be built into the front roof slope in this area, and the new addition is proposed for the 3rd story at this location. So the roof deck is in the bottom, the southeast corner, with the addition adding living space on that upper half story, which you can see on the drawings. So this there also includes some minor changes to the window and door locations. Basically, currently there's a door in this bay and a window in this bay. These will just be swapped for a better flow within the renovated building. And then there's also a rear non-historic addition that will be partially rebuilt and reclad. So regarding the work on the roof with the decks, we do have sightline drawing. The roof deck will be inset, leaving the front parapet and cornice in place, forming that required railing. So the deck itself, as it will be inset, the walls will remain. It's just the removal of the roof. So that is a typical application that we have seen. The 3rd-story addition, you can see how this will add the additional living space to the 3rd floor. It is set back from the front facade by about 7 feet so that it will not be visible when viewed from Dunlap. It will have visibility when viewed from Stark Street along the side, partially because of the wide side yard due to its location on a corner lot and an angled lot at that. So there will be some visibility to either side of the chimneys here to this addition. And the applicant is proposing cladding for this to be a Viroc cement bonded particle board panel. So this is a little bit different than what we typically see with a fiber cement panel. From what I can tell from the specs that were submitted, the panels will have an appearance that's more similar to a poured concrete than a typical fiber cement panel. While we would not typically want to see this type of material on a highly visible feature or on the front facade, staff does have fewer concerns due to its proposed location above the roof line of the building. The applicant's also proposing a darker colored material that will help that blend into the background. The applicant is proposing that same type of material on the rear one-story addition on the back of the building. And while that is not highly visible from either of the streets, being a first floor, a ground floor feature that will have some visibility from Stark, staff does recommend that be clad in a more traditional siding such as a hardy lap or a similar material. The applicant has discussed that with their client and they have agreed to make the change on the rear addition. So with that being said, staff does recommend approval of the certificate of appropriateness for the proposed addition, roof deck and exterior rehabilitation with the condition that the recladding of the rear addition shall be a hardy lap siding to be approved at this by staff prior to the issuance of permits rather than the proposed Vyrock cement bonded particle board proposed, and that the building permit must be issued within 2 years or the COA shall expire.
All right, thank you. We have checked in on this item, Kurt Platt.
Yes, and I'm Samantha Offringa. I'm the applicant. I'm here with the owner, Kim and Kurt. Do I need to sign in or under oath before I speak?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Could you, I guess all three of you raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
And just so I can keep my record straight, who do I have talking now?
I'm Samantha Offringa, the applicant. I've got to my right, Kim Starbuck, the building owner, and to my left, Kurt Platt of.
Yeah, okay, sorry. I only had Kurt shown as checked in, but clearly you're all together, so that explains that. All right, you're sworn in. What would you like to add that staff has not told us?
Yeah, so we're just here to answer any questions. The only thing I'd like to add is that the third story is not really an added floor. It's just a increasing the height of the ceiling to make it usable. So it's not really an added story. That's it. Yeah, that's all I have to add.
Okay. And I assume that nobody else wants to chime in there.
No, I think that's all we have to add. If we have any questions, we're here to answer them.
All right. Are there questions or comments from the board? I have one question. The staff is asking you to switch to a hardy lap siding on the one-story addition. And I have not heard of Vyrock, whatever it is. Why did you elect to go with that, the hardy panel?
The Vyrock, we originally were showing the Vyrock at the first floor addition, but Doug mentioned that he felt it may be more appropriate to go with the hardy lap siding, and we're okay with that as well.
I guess my question is, what is it that about the Vyrock, which I have not dealt with, as I say, that made you want to use that on the third floor?
Oh, it's a very simple looking material that kind of goes away. We've used it on a couple other projects and over the Rhine. It's like I said, it's a material that looks similar to concrete, and as a rain screen, it's a very durable material. So that, like, we've used on a couple of projects and felt like it was most appropriate.
Okay, just a point of curiosity.
Yeah, sure.
Okay with it, I am. All right, are there any other questions or comments from the board? Absent that, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve the certificate of appropriateness as laid out by staff.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Ms. McKenzie.
Aye.
Mr. Weiss.
Aye.
Mr. Zelasco.
Aye.
Mr. Sunderman.
Aye.
The chair votes aye. Item number 4, 2035 Dunlop Street is approved. Brings us to item number 5, 1330 Broadway. Mr. Owens, you want to bring us up to speed?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is for 1330 Broadway. It is an application for certificate of appropriateness as well as zoning relief. It is located in the Over the Rhine Historic District. So the applicant is requesting a certificate of appropriateness for the renovation of an existing building, including interior alterations as well as exterior alterations that include changes to the primary facade as well as construction of a side addition for a new entry. The proposal will require zoning relief in the form of a dimensional variance of 1.9 feet for a proposed 3.1 foot combined side yard setback, which is short of the required 5 feet. So this is an interesting property in the Over the Rhine Historic District. It is along Broadway, and the building does have a facade that does not appear to match up with the rest of the building. So it is likely that this building did have the facade replaced at some point in the late 30s, early 40s. This is a wire cut brick that does not match the brick work on the rest of the building. And staff agrees with the applicant that this was likely not the original facade. Sanborn maps do show that the building did originally have a front entry in the same location that it's currently located. However, it did have a wood frame porch that does show up through the 1934 Sanborn. So it's likely that the porch was replaced at the same time as the remainder of the facade being altered sometime after that 1934 Sanborn was published. The window openings that are currently in the building do not exactly align with most of the contributing buildings in the vicinity. They're smaller in size as far as the openings go with the paired windows, and the windows themselves are vinyl replacements. So the applicant is proposing to renovate the building into a single family residence, and that would include removing the existing brick porch and entry, removing the existing front vinyl windows, and altering the openings with a projecting bay, which you can see on the first floor, a projecting bay with 3 new window openings that would be taller in height, that would more match a historic opening. And they're also proposing enlarging the upper openings into a sliding door with a Juliet balcony. With the front entry and porch removed, the applicant's proposing a new side entry, which you can see here. It would be a covered enclosed entry for the majority. The rear portion would have an opening that would allow access into the existing side entry door behind the new proposed entry. And as part of the project, the applicant is also proposing replacing, rebuilding the existing stone retaining walls and removing the deteriorated concrete steps and walk and relocating them to the north side of the lot to align with the new entrance. So here you can see that existing rear L that sticks out with the door. That would all be retained with the new addition built just in front of that. And the applicant has also provided some other examples of similar door openings and balconies in the vicinity. So because of the alterations that have been made to the facade of the building, staff is supportive of the proposed change to the building with removing the brick porch and relocating the entry to the side. That side porch will necessitate the variance that I mentioned before, but that is still in line with similar properties in the surrounding area. Having a 3'1" side yard, total side yard setback is common for the district. So staff does feel that is appropriate. There are also side entry buildings that are found throughout the district, including the building directly next door. So this is not a feature that is completely out of place in the district. So staff does feel that the addition as well as the removal of the porch is appropriate. And because of the alterations to the front facade with the window openings, staff feels that those changes that are made are appropriate, and they do bring that altered facade closer to being compatible with the surrounding architecture. And the retaining walls, the stone will be retained. They will just be rebuilt. They are damaged just due to their age, with the wall beginning to bow out. The metal fence along the top of the wall will be retained and reinstalled after the work is complete. So staff is supportive of the request. We do recommend approval of the certificate of appropriateness for the proposed addition and exterior rehabilitation, with the condition that the building permit must be issued within 2 years or the COA shall expire. And I should also mention in the staff report, I erroneously left in a finding from a previous report. So under finding 2, with the roof deck and rear attic level addition, etc., that should be stricken. That is not applicable to this project.
Thank you. I have a quick question. Walk me through again, I understand rebuilding the wall is the access up to the house moving. I misunderstood, or I didn't understand what you're saying as far as lining it up with the new entry.
Sure. So currently you can see on the screen, the subject property is here. There is an existing staircase coming up from the south side of that front lot. It comes directly to the porch leading into the house, and also has a concrete walk that comes across to the side leading to the side entry door. So these steps are all concrete steps that are replacements, and they are deteriorated. The applicant is proposing to shift that walk to the north side of the lot, so it will come straight in to the new side entry porch. So that stone wall will be repaired, and the stone that's removed from the existing, where the new walk is going to be replaced in the location of the former.
Got it. Okay, I appreciate that. All right. I have 3 people checked in. Who is speaking on behalf of the applicant?
Late in the afternoon.
Herb? Mute yourself if you're gonna do that.
Sorry.
No worries.
Sorry.
Don't mind you doing it. Just don't listen in on a phone call.
That's okay. Wasn't important.
All right. So who is speaking on behalf of the applicant?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
this is Ken Jones.
Okay.
And the owner is here as well, Elizabeth Sedler and Michelle Avery. And I will speak for the owner. I think that, first of all, I want to thank the staff for, I'm sorry.
No worries. Let's get you sworn in. Hear what you have to say.
Ken, could you please raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right. What do you have to add?
Well, I don't have a lot to add, but I'd like, first of all, to thank the staff for their time and for their help, and also for the board's time today. I think Douglas did a great job of covering everything that we're requesting and asking to do. And we're really here to answer any questions or comments that the board may have. So thank you.
Okay. Liz Sedler, would you like to add anything?
No, just here to answer questions.
All right. And Michelle Avery Keeley.
Yes, I would like to add something.
All right. Let's get you sworn in.
Could you please raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
All right, go ahead.
Well, Mr. Owen did a great job describing the project. I just wanted to clarify one point. The Juliet balcony doors are French doors and not sliding doors, and that's all I wanted to add.
All right. All right, I believe that's everybody who's checked in and signed in. Questions from the board for the staff or applicant?
Doug, just to confirm, it wasn't in your summary, but it was in the body of your text, the relief from the zoning, the combined side yard setbacks.
Yes, I apologize there. We're also, yeah, I did not have that in there.
Okay.
I apologize.
But that applies.
We are also recommending approval of that of the 1.9 foot dimensional variance for the proposed 3.1 foot combined side yard setback.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zelasco. Good catch. All right. Other questions or comments? If not, I will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to move that we approve both the zoning relief and the certificate of appropriateness for this property as outlined by staff.
Mr. Zelasco, that also includes striking the second finding.
I'm sorry, what was that?
I believe Doug recommended striking the finding B2.
Yeah, correct, yes.
All right, I have a motion to accept what's laid out by staff, striking the second finding and adding the variance on the side setback. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. I have a motion and a second. Ms. McKenzie?
Aye.
Mr. Weiss?
Aye.
Mr. Zelasco?
Aye.
Mr. Sunderman?
Aye.
This is a fairly dramatic change, but it's a dramatic change to something with the brick the way it is that I think is more than appropriate. So the chair votes aye. All right, item number
Kim,
5.
this is Cassandra. I hate to interrupt, but I do have 5 people that joined us in the waiting room. I know who a couple are. There's one I need to personally check in. Do you want to let them in now or do you want to wait?
Do we have any idea which item they're for?
One of them, I'm not sure, but the remaining are 8.
Okay. Well, if you need to monopolize us to do that, let's go ahead and get people signed in.
Okay.
And you will send me an updated list?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
And Cassandra, this is the court reporter. While you're doing that, may I step away for a couple minutes for the restroom? I'll be right back.
Okay, just let me know when you're back.
I'll be right back. Thank you very much.
Okay, I let everybody in that was on the list. I have the 5th person as user Fred Berger. I don't have him on our list and it looks like he is not connecting. I can't make contact with him. I'll leave him in the room and just try to see if I can connect with him later on. But as soon as the court reporter gets back, I'm ready on my end, Tim.
Okay. Excuse me. Cassandra, I'll keep an eye out for the updated list.
I'm typing it right now. It should be there shortly.
Court reporter's back. Thank you.
You're welcome. Didn't go very far without you, so we're gonna stick with you.
Okay.
All right. Let me see where we are. We're on item number 6. Is that correct? All right, 1413 Elm Street, Mr. Owen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I did combine items 6 and 7 in the staff report as they are both new construction projects. They're adjacent to each other and they were submitted under the same plans. So
Then the way we'll handle that is have you present once. We will vote separately on each item.
okay, sounds good. So this is the applications for 1413 and 1415 Elm Street. These are both located in the Over the Rhine Historic District. The lots are currently vacant land and the applicant is proposing new construction for 2 new single-family residential houses. So you can see the vacant lots on the screen. The houses will be accessed through an easement along the rear of the properties, crossing the 3 parcels to access each of the new units. There will be no access off the alley. All the access will come from Magnolia Street. You can see that better in the overhead image. And there is zoning relief involved in this project through conditional use approvals for each of the properties. They are located in a CCA zoning district, and that district does not allow ground floor residential uses. So the applicant is requesting conditional use approval for each of the lots to allow a single family house on each lot. So the proposal includes the 2 new single-family homes. They'll be clad in brick, masonry block, and cement fiberboard siding. The 1413 Elm property will have a 2-story facade at the front street with a 3rd story set back under the roof as it extends to the rear of the lot. 1415 Elm Street will have a 3-story facade along the street with a 4-story setback in a similar manner. Both properties are proposed with roof decks. And you can see from the side elevation, there will also be decks on the rear, as well as the garage access along the lower level. So regarding the conditional use approval, staff does feel that this is appropriate. While it is a CCA district, there are many other residential buildings along this stretch of the CCA zoning that do feature ground floor dwelling units. So staff does feel it is a substantial property right of properties in the vicinity. And regarding, excuse me, the certificate of appropriateness discussion, staff does feel that these buildings are appropriate and do meet the historic conservation guidelines. The buildings do have a strong base, middle, and top, as it is found in a similar manner throughout the district with the cornice line along the front, the windows primarily making up the middle, and the slightly raised foundation and the entries along the base. The roof is a common form also found in the district, although there are a variety of roof types in the district with shed roofs as well as these similar side gable roofs. This is a fairly modest pitch. It is kind of somewhere in the middle as far as the pitch line goes, but it is low enough that when standing directly in front, the roof deck is not going to be visible from the street. The applicant is also proposing a 0 setback on the front. And staff does feel that this is also appropriate. There are a variety of setbacks found in the vicinity. The former church building that is adjacent at 1419 Elm Street is built to the corner, as well as the mixed-use corner building at 1401 Elm Street. There are residential buildings between those at 1403 to 1411 do have small setbacks with fencing, but because of the variety of setbacks, staff does feel that that is appropriate to have it built to the front lot line. It will have an inset portion along the entry areas at the side to allow for an in-swinging gate to access that entry so that nothing has to come out into the right of way. So that staff also believes that the proposal follows the rhythm as well as the emphasis of other buildings found in the vicinity. Staff does feel that the height is also appropriate to the site. So the building immediately adjacent at 1415 Elm Street is a former church building. So it is only 1 story technically. However, the 1 story is approximately 25.5 feet tall, which is generally equivalent to his 2-story building. With 1415 Elm proposed at 3 stories, it is taller than the guidelines would generally state. However, being that this is a former institutional building, they often did not conform to the primary heights of residential buildings in the district. And the fact that it is equivalent of a 2-story building, and the new construction that's proposed does have a 2-story facade along the front that is what will be visible when you're viewing from in front of the building. So while it is technically a 3-story building, staff feels that the design has helped to minimize that additional story to make it more compatible with the district. So staff is comfortable with the height that is proposed. And similarly, on 1415 Elm Street, it has a 3-story facade along the front street, and the 4th story is set back under the roof, behind the roof deck. And again, that will not be visible from directly in front. So it reads from the street as more of a 3-story building, which is comparable to the building across the alley, which is considered an abutting building based on the zoning standards. So staff does feel that the heights are appropriate for both of the proposed new buildings. As far as the materials are concerned, they're primarily brick on the front. The inset portion of 1413 Elm Street is proposed with a masonry block facade as well as the raised foundation. That specific type of block has not been chosen yet by the applicant. Staff would recommend that that be a rusticated block of some type or or something similar, and staff would want to see those final materials before they are installed. So with that inset portion being slightly set back from the street, staff does not have an issue with the block on that portion because it won't be as prominent as the brick portion, which is along the street. And that material also does help to provide a differentiation between the historic construction and new construction. So that building will be recognized as new. The sides, materials on the sides, primarily brick. There is some cement fiber siding as well, and also along the back. And staff is also feels this is appropriate, as many historic brick buildings had rear frame additions. This would fit within the compatibility of that type of construction. And that being said, staff would recommend approval of the zoning relief for a single family home at 1413 Elm Street. As a conditional use approval required for ground floor residential uses in the CCA district. And staff recommends approval of the certificate of appropriateness for 1413 Elm Street for the same plans. With the condition that the building permits must be issued within 2 years of the decision date or the COA shall expire, and that the architect shall submit samples of materials of the proposed masonry block and brick to the urban conservator for approval prior to issuing the building permits. We also recommend on 1415 Elm Street approval for the conditional use approval for the ground floor residential use, as well as approval of the certificate of appropriateness for 1415 Elm Street with the condition that the building permits must be issued within 2 years of the decision date or the COA shall expire. I think you're muted, Mr. Chair.
I just had such brilliant words that you all missed. What I said was I have Darren Meyer listed as the applicant. Will you be speaking on behalf of the projects, Mr. Meyer?
I will, and the owners are present as well and would like to say a few words.
Okay, let's get, so you have Yale and Judy Cossett with you?
Yes, sir.
All right, let's get all three of you sworn in.
Joel, please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
I do.
All right. What do you have to add that Mr. Owen did not tell us?
Well, I'd like to add a couple of clarifications. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Darren Myers of Ken Bowerman Architects in Cincinnati. And I just want to clarify a few things. We've done several projects in over the Rhine, and it's been a pleasure working with you guys and the neighborhood over the years. I'm excited that Yale and Judy want to do something with this property. If you're all familiar with it, it's the old City Gospel parcels that have been there for a while. It's a pretty significant piece of property, and it needs something of size and of character, and something that not only fits in the neighborhood, but is worthy of that piece of property that's there. I want to, Doug, is it possible to show any of the images of the volumes inserted into the Google Earth? We have a couple additional volume sketches that I'd just like to talk for a moment about the setback and the height that were brought up. If you've ever used Google Earth, it's a nice feature, but it also sometimes looks a little cattywampus. So bear with some of the discrepancies in it, but it shows you the building put into the context. And the one thing we wanted to point out is we're very familiar with the guidelines and appreciate them and support them. And sometimes some of the guidelines can be a little bit difficult to bump up against because not every street is just like what's there. And we really consider this immediate block, which is from Music Hall to 15th Street, so from 14th, 15th to 15th Street along Elm Street. The buildings on both sides of it are really, there's nothing that's very much in line at all. If you look at this picture right here that he's got shown up, and you look from the corner of 14th and Elm where the gray building is, that building's up to the sidewalk, but then the next building is pushed back and has a bump out that's on it that comes up closer to the sidewalk. Then the blue building is back about 4 or 5 feet from the sidewalk. And then if you come to the other side of the street and you look that way, almost many of those buildings are in line, but pushed 4 or 5 feet back. And the heights are very different. So one of the unique things that we really like about this block is that everything's up and down and everything's front and back. And so one of the things we wanted to do was to be up on the sidewalk and create that kind of edge, that wall that we all so much like about Over the Rhine, but at the same time, give it a little bit of character and a little bit of movement, because that's what this block face does. And so we are up on 1413 Elm Street, where the Cossets will be living themselves along Adrian Alley. We are up to the sidewalk, but we do push back about 4 feet for the entry itself. We'll have an iron gate that'll keep that edge there along the building, but we do recess the entry and the stories above it. And then the same thing as we bump down to the 2-story building, we're doing the same thing there. We're not changing materials there because that building is of smaller scale. But again, we're just moving the entry back to create a little play along there and not create this big 3 and 2-story wall that slams into the side of the church building. The other thing I wanted to mention about the church building is it is currently undergoing a renovation, and the owner will be putting in 2 condominiums in there. And while the church building itself is a 1-story venue, there is a 2-story section behind it, and they will be adding a 2-story, updating that and putting 2-story condominiums in there. So it actually is a 2-story building in and of itself. And that building will have some covered parking and an apartment above it that will go back to the same easement that accesses both of these buildings in the rear. The one thing that wasn't mentioned that I do want to point out is that when you look at the drawings that he showed earlier, one side appears to be very plain, as in all brick, but that's actually not the case, because that is the side that's up against the 2-story church building and its addition. So very little of that will protrude above, and that will be brick, so that would be visible. The other side on 1413 that's up against Adrian Alley, we are actually holding that back 5 feet from the alley itself. And the reason is because that's what building code require us to do in order to put any window openings for egress and light and air along that. It also keeps from that being a very narrow 10-foot sliver. The clients, Judy and Yale, will not be using that for their own access, but that alley will still remain accessible. And so we'll be pulling that back 5 feet in order to allow for that elevation that you saw with all the window openings and outdoor deck terraces that look out on to the alley. But we will maintain the edge along the alley with an iron gate back to the parking pad. And then at the parking pad, it'll be a combination brick and iron top to it, iron fence that'll match that same fence that'll run down the side. So we will maintain the edge along the street in both directions. And that will allow them to then access the light and the air and not be completely making a tunnel out of that area, that alley. The other thing regarding the materials is we very much wanted to stay true to brick, and we are very amenable to showing the samples and getting the mortar as well matched up. And we will talk to the urban conservator about that. We've been in contact with other people in the neighborhood, including several of the different community organizations, and we're very open to what they have to say about the brick itself. We would like to transition to a different material for the reasons that Doug even spoke about, which is to break this building down a little bit while creating kind of a facade that's up on the street. At most of the part, we do want to have some differentiation between the two buildings as well as the older historic buildings. I'll let you all ask me if you have any questions about window openings, rhythm, base, middle, top, any of that stuff. I'd be glad to ask them, but I just wanted to give you more of a context of what we wrestled with and the solution we came up with for our immediate area.
Thank you. All right. Let's say, what do the owners have to say, Yale and Judy Cossett?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Really wanting to echo what Darren has shared on the context and specific consideration for our home projects. Reiterate how excited we are to be joining the community. We've also, as Darren mentioned, very much enjoyed meeting many of our future neighbors. Also valued the input we've received both from the staff and our future neighbors on potential considerations as we continue our project. So that was really it, and making ourselves available for any question. Our family very much looking forward to joining the community. So thanks all for the consideration and support throughout the project.
Okay. Judy Costa, do you have anything you want to add?
That.
Okay.
At it. Thanks.
All right. We do have a couple other people who are checked in and signed in. Joe Rudemiller.
Hello, yeah, I'm Joe Rudemiller with 3CDC. We recently
Sorry,
sold.
Joe, were you sworn in?
Sorry, I was not.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Leslie Oz, can I go ahead and sign you, or to swear you in as well?
Hi.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
All right, thank you. All right, go ahead, Joe.
Thank you. As I said, I'm Joe Rudemiller at 3CDC. We recently sold these lots to the Cossettes, and just want to express our excitement for the design that they've brought forth. We feel like they've been very thoughtful and considerate. We feel like this is a very positive use for this vacant lot here. It's going to bring some additional life to the neighborhood and fill in that vacant lot. We have properties in the area, and we feel like the design that they've brought forth is really consistent with the existing residences in OTR, especially in that area of Elm Street. So again, just wanted to reiterate our support and our thanks to the Cossettes for their investment in this vacant lot.
Okay. Leslie Paz.
Hi. I live at 128 West 14th Street, so I'm around the corner from them. I just had a few things I wanted to say. I think it's a really big responsibility to, maintaining historical look, and I like, the brick that they have incorporated. I'm just concerned about the front, how it's not flush, either all the way up to the front or, a lot of them sit back 5 or 6 feet and are flush versus how it has where it dips in, where the door is at. That's part of living in OTR is you're either, stepping directly out into the sidewalk, or some people have front little patios. And so I'm concerned about that, fitting in, since that will be very different from what I've seen when I walk around my neighborhood. And then just, I know that they mentioned the height as far, from the front, but with popularity of FC Cincinnati Stadium, there's gonna be a lot of people seeing from the rear side, and it'll look pretty large, I would think. So those are just some of the main concerns. And if there's a way that they can have, it looks like there's some other type of material on the side, having brick all the way around it to fit in, since it will be seen on the alleyway side, not necessarily on the other side of 1415, but on 1413, the side of the building. Those are just a few things, but yeah.
Thank you for sharing. All right, that's everybody I have.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
This is the one I wanted to speak on as well.
All right. Let's get you sworn in.
Okay.
Danny, could you raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm
Yes.
to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
All right, identify yourself, give your address, and go ahead.
Sure. My name is Danny Klingler. I live at 225 Magnolia Street. I'm the owner of 225, 223, and 217 Magnolia Street. Excuse me. And I'm also the executive director of OTR Adopt. Yale and I, the owner, had a very, very productive meeting about 2 weeks ago. And I really like Yale. I haven't met Judy yet, but I think, yeah, so I thought we had come to some really great understandings about this project. The reason that I'm here today is that there hasn't been enough time to really continue and work out the dialogue on one of the remaining issues that that I have still concerned about. And so I'm here from vacation in Virginia to speak on that. And again, I've told Darren, I think he does really nice forms and shapes of these buildings. The concern I want to raise is one that the previous speaker raised, and that's those insets. Having a consistent planar geometry in over the Rhine is very important. So what these properties are doing is they're doing both. They're part of the facade is all the way up, part of it's back, set back, and that's where I really take issue with it. I think I've suggested to Yale that the way that you could kind of have it both ways by simply using the precedent that's set by many other buildings next door and across the street, where the facade is flush, but then just that entry element has a vestibule. You'll see it on the building immediately south across Adrian Alley. There's an entry vestibule just on that ground floor where you can go up, you can be protected, you have steps, you can stay out of the weather, but the rest of your facade is brought all the way out. So I'm just really concerned about setting a new precedent, here on Vine Street, where everything is consistent planar geometry, just like in the rest of Over the Rhine, of kind of going in and out, having those insets. And I don't understand the necessity of that. I'm not sure why you couldn't do it. Well, regardless of that, I think it's really important to maintain that character along Elm Street and just be, consistent all the way through with it. And also the block, that masonry block on that 1413 inset, that's just, we just don't see masonry block on facades. And so I think it's really important to me that be all brick. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. All right, that's everybody I have checked in and signed in that I know of. Anybody else that I don't have? All right. Questions, comments from the board for staff, applicant?
Yeah, I do have a question. And I appreciate Darren's willingness and the owner's willingness to work he identified the exterior materials and would work with the board and staff to resolve that. But I did have a question as to what was masonry block. I didn't see any further description of that.
So
hopefully that's not concrete block. It's some other kind of clay fired or something.
Well, that's still open for final selection. I will say that we've done several projects down there over the last 10 years, and there are many examples that we've even incorporated on projects that have a chiseled face or a rough face masonry block. The masonry block is colored. It is not stark gray, doesn't look like a CMU, and the mortar does not contrast. It's actually, we're open to a potential stone look or stone cladding. We're open to maybe even limestone, but something that in our opinion would be slightly different than the brick itself, rather than trying to do like a two-tone brick, which we're not really in favor of, but something that shows a physical separation. We like to change in scale there, and I know that's not extremely common down there, but there are areas where the materials do change. And so I did send a picture or two to Doug. I don't know if you want to share those, but there are many examples. We have a few on Republic Street. There's a series of townhomes there that we did in the 1300 block, and then up in the 1500 block, we did the Mr. Flume's house, and it has a base of the same material that we're considering. But again, we're open to suggestions and working with not only the urban conservator, with people of maybe something that could push the boundaries a little bit on the brick in that area, but not just be, oh, we'll just put a concrete block.
Thank you. I would object to the concrete block appearance, not necessarily this. I don't have a problem with the scale and that kind of thing.
This is probably a question for Mr. Owen, but I assume that since we're not in a district with a zero lot line at the front of the property, are the guidelines kind of mute on articulation in this condition?
Yes, the zoning code does not require a setback because it's a commercial district. So we're basically just looking at the conservation guidelines, which basically state that most commercial buildings are built to the lot line, and it says some residential property, especially detached buildings, have shallow setbacks but retain an edge at the property line with a fence. So judging from the context on this block is where I was basing that analysis.
I do agree it's a slightly unusual geometry for this area. So just trying to wrestle with that.
I had, my initial take was very similar to yours, trying to wrestle with it. And I certainly reflective of Danny Klingler's comment. And the more I thought about it, the more I looked at it, the latitude that is given to new construction, I got comfortable with it, but I understand the reservation. Other questions or comments? All right. In which case, I want to break this up. I would like a motion on item number 6, 1413 Elm Street.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve the zoning variance and the certificate of appropriateness for 1413 Elm Street, as
Second.
laid out by staff.
Second.
All right. Ms. McKenzie? I'm sorry, what?
No.
Mr. Weiss?
Aye.
Mr. Zelasco?
Aye.
Mr. Sunderman? Mr. Sunderman? Sorry, what was that?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. That brings us to item number 7, 1415 Elm Street. Do I have a motion on that?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve the zoning variance and the certificate of appropriateness for 1415 Elm as laid out by staff.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Ms. McKenzie?
No.
Mr. Weiss?
Aye.
Mr. Zelasco? Mr. Sunderman?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear Mr. Zelasco's vote.
Yes.
He voted aye. Mr. Sunderman?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. All right. That brings us to 2000 Dunlap Street, item number 8. I want to do just a bit of housekeeping up front. We received a couple letters today. They were both in support. I'm perfectly comfortable with them being included. We also received a request last week for documents and a video to be incorporated. I was unable to access the video, so I'm going to rule that we can incorporate the documents, but I'm going to exclude the video at this point because we haven't had a chance, or I haven't had a chance to review it. So with that as the backdrop, let's go forward with Mr. Owen and have you run down what we have here.
Thanks,
Hey, Mr. Voss, it's Sean Suter here on behalf of the applicant. I just have a question about those additional materials that were submitted. We haven't received copies of anything. I was wondering what those documents were that were submitted and if we could get copies, please.
I did not realize that they were not put out there. Absent that, Mr. Martinez, I have painted myself into a corner, but if both sides have not seen documents, should we preclude them given the fact that they came in late and have not been published?
I believe they were circulated to the board members. If, it's completely within your discretion whether to include or exclude them. given that the board, have all the board members had an opportunity to review the materials, since that's the important piece. I think we can share them with the applicant and opposition parties as well. If they would like to preserve an objection to the inclusion of those documents, they can do so, but it's at your discretion.
Sorry, Charles, I just wanted to clarify that the video and the document was sent to the board chair only. I did not circulate it to the board members. I was waiting for his approval.
I apologize. I talked to Charles about it. I should have talked to you. All right, given that I'm the only one to have seen this, I'm going to exclude, they came in late. I'm going to exclude the documents that were submitted beyond time, having been the only one to review them. So, all right, with that backdrop, Mr. Owen, you want to give us a rundown on 2000 Dunlop Street?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is an application for zoning relief as well as a certificate of appropriateness for 2000 Dunlop Street, which is in the Over the Rhine Historic District. This application was originally heard in January 2022 as part of the zoning relief only. At that point, the design had not been completed. Without the design in front of the board, it was tabled until an entire application came in. So the applicant has finished the design work and submitted that to continue the hearing. So quickly going over the zoning relief, nothing has changed from the original submission regarding the zoning relief. The footprint of the building is the same. So the variant and the unit count is the same. So the variances that are required include a variance to allow a density of 227 square feet of lot area per unit, as well as a dimensional variance for a rear yard setback of 0. So the staff still feels that the zoning relief is appropriate as was originally outlined in the initial hearing. The density variance does line up with other density variances that have been granted in the vicinity, both for low-income housing tax credit projects as well as market rate construction. So staff has no reason to recommend denial of the density variance, as we do feel that it is appropriate and would not create significant adverse impacts. And the same with the rear yard setback. We are still supportive of the setback. The 0 setback is basically created by the rear wing that comes out to the rear lot line. The building is providing a small parking area as well as an outdoor courtyard space for the residents within that inset portion that will not be covered by the building footprint. So staff is supportive of the setback variance, as 0 lot line setbacks are quite common in Over the Rhine. So regarding the certificate of appropriateness, staff is also supportive of the proposed design. It's our opinion, the infill development does not replicate the existing buildings in the area and has a design and detailing that's based on the fabric of the neighborhood while being modern in style. The building does have a base, middle, and top. While it's a residential building, and these features are not typically as strong as commercial buildings, it does still incorporate the base through the use of different materials and colors, with the base being a light gray brick on the first floor, topped with a cast stone belt course. And let me get the drawings up for you. Okay, so this is the site, currently a surface parking lot. And this is the setback area that I was referring to earlier. Sorry, I didn't have these up. This is the courtyard area with the small parking lot adjacent. Here's a little bit more of a detailed view. So here you can see the base that is defined by that lighter gray brick, as well as the storefront area. which is not a true storefront, but obviously the lobby and residential entrance area to this building. The middle of the building is defined by the red-orange brick, as well as paired window openings in a horizontal and a vertical alignment. Around the windows, there's a change of materials and a change of plane that help also break that facade up. And the top is defined by the small cornice line and the darker brick soldier cores. Staff does feel that the composition, as well as the roof material, which is fairly flat, and the window openings themselves are all compatible with the surrounding architecture in the vicinity. And the storefront entry, while not required on residential buildings, does provide additional interest to the building, as well as being located on the corner of the streets. Staff does feel that is an appropriate treatment to the entry of the building. I mentioned previously the setbacks. We do feel that is compliant with the conservation guidelines, just as the surrounding area is generally has many examples of buildings built lot line to lot line. And the building does also comply, we feel, with the rhythm and the emphasis. While it is a fairly large lot, being 100 feet wide on each street face, the applicant has provided a rhythm to the building by providing the verticality through the window bays, as well as recessed areas that break up the facade to give it more of the feel of multiple buildings. It doesn't feel like one solid unrelieved wall as you're walking by. Regarding the height, the proposed building is 4 stories. There are buildings adjacent to the subject property. However, they are both non-conforming structures. So this property, as well as this property, are both 1-story non-contributing buildings. So they are not considered as far as the height requirements for the district. The contributing buildings in the immediate area vary between 2 and 3 stories, including buildings on the south along Henry Street, as well as across the street on Dunlap. The corner building is 3 stories. And further down, about a block to the south, this is actually a 4-story building. So due to the lack of immediate context on the existing block, staff does feel that the proposed 4-story height is appropriate to the district when expanding that to the blocks surrounding the building. And it should also be noted that the building that formerly occupied this site was also 4 stories in height. So staff does feel that the 4-story height is appropriate. Materials, staff also believes the building materials are appropriate, primarily brick, with some metal paneling above and below the paired windows as an accent material. So I have the full analysis in the staff report. In the interest of time, I will cut to the recommendations. Those are sort of the highlights, but staff does feel that overall the project does conform to both the zoning relief requirements as well as the conservation guidelines. So we do recommend approval of the variance to allow a proposed density of 227 square feet of land area per unit for a unit count of 44 units. And we do recommend approval of the 10-foot setback variance for a 0 lot line on the portion of the lot per plans provided by New Republic Architecture. We also do recommend approval of the certificate of appropriateness for single-family home at 1413 Elm Street per the plan submitted by Kenneth R. Or excuse me, sorry, this is the one that I also messed up in the staff report. I apologize. The actual language is on the screen now. The certificate of appropriateness recommendation is based on the plans by New Republic dated 4/5/2022. So we do recommend approval of the application for the certificate of appropriateness for the proposed new construction at 2000 Dunlap Street with the following condition: that the building permit or that the building permits must be issued within 2 years of the decision date or the COA shall expire.
Tim, you're muted.
Again, you missed the best words. I have Mr. Suter listed as the applicant. Mr. Suter, you want to lead us off here?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the board, everyone who's here today, staff. Appreciate your thorough report. Obviously, we agree with your findings and appreciate your thorough analysis. So really important project, reintroducing, I know this has been before the board on the variance items before, but this is the 2000 Dunlop Street project that is being developed and operated by Over the Rhine Community Housing. Our client, they're with me today, along with my colleague JP Burley, who's in the room with me here. We've been with you the last hour and 40 minutes approximately, and I think every project that's come before you has been a beautiful single family project in Over the Rhine. And I think for every one person who's fortunate enough to be able to build something like that and Over the Rhine for themselves and their family, there are a significant, maybe exponential number of people in our community that do not have that same fortune or luxury. So we are talking about folks who are housing challenged, homeless, and the organization that I represent that's here before you today seeking your approval is an organization that builds quality housing and for those people in our community that so need it. So we're here today to talk about a brand new 44-unit, 4-story building on 2000 Dunlap Street. Right now, it's a surface parking lot. So I know we can do better than that. And certainly 44 new housing units in a city that needs housing for people of all incomes, especially in people that are chronically homeless. I think this is a fantastic infill reuse. As Doug mentioned, this property had been a traditional Over the Rhine 4-story building, a 0 lot line that was demolished at some point. And it's been a surface parking lot ever since. And now we're talking about recreating and infilling something which is really important and fantastic for the community. I'm here today with Ben Eilerman, who is the senior housing developer with Over the Rhine Community Housing. Graham Colbley, who is the architect of record, submitted the plans for Over the Rhine Community Housing. Mary Rivers, who's the executive director, is with us today. And Andy Hutzel, who's the housing director, is also here. There are, I know, a number of other people in support of the project who are going to be speaking later. Our primary witnesses are going to be Ben Eilerman and Graham Colbley. They're going to testify to why the variances are justified under the standards and also testify as to why a certificate of appropriateness for new construction should be granted on this project. So we're really talking about 3 things here. We really want to keep it focused. I know it's been a long meeting already. Talking about a rear yard 10-foot variance. That really allows us to comply with the historic district guidelines, which do encourage a 0 lot line development. That's the traditional historic pattern in Over the Rhine. It's kind of interesting that we even have a setback requirement in Over the Rhine when that was not the historic development pattern. So anyway, we're looking for a 10-foot variance, and we're going to explain to you why we need that. And then also the density variance to allow for 44 units. By right, 14 units are allowed. Again, it's hard to believe that we're only allowing 14 units on a 10,000 square foot lot in a very dense urban environment. I think all these variances expose some of the deficiencies that we have in our applicable zoning in this particular part of Cincinnati. But so we do need your help in getting relief on those issues. And then we have designed the building in conformance with the Over the Rhine Historic District guidelines, and a COA is appropriate for that. Now, Mary Rivers and Andy Hutzel are here, and there are rebuttal witnesses. If we need to call them to rebut anything that's brought up today or to clarify anything, they will be available later for that. We want to make sure that everyone is clear on the scope of the hearing. Again, 2 variances and the historic district guidelines. A lot of times, obviously, when you're introducing housing to support chronically homeless, there's a lot of misinformation out there. There's a lot of biases that find their way into these hearings. We don't believe that's appropriate in these circumstances. We want to stick to the standards and the guidelines, and those are the decisions that are before you today. So we appreciate your time, all the time and effort that's been gone into this project so far, and we look forward to being heard today and being approved. So thank you for that, and I'd like to ask Mr. Ben Eilerman to speak next.
Thank you, Sean.
Mr. Eilerman, could you please raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
May I proceed, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Mr. Eilerman, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
Could you please state your name and address for the record?
Ben Eilerman, 114 West 14th Street, Cincinnati, Ohio, 45202.
And what is your relationship, Mr. Eilerman, to the Over the Rhine Community Housing?
I'm employed as a senior housing developer. And so my duties include managing all of the steps necessary to develop affordable housing projects. That goes from initial idea and conception all the way until residents move in.
So your day-to-day responsibilities have to do with getting projects like this constructed, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. How long has Over the Rhine Community Housing owned the property?
I believe since May 13th, 1992.
And was that prior to the adoption of the zoning code, do you know? And the
Yes, it is prior to the adoption of the zoning code.
Okay. So the density and setback requirements that are issued today were not in place, to your knowledge, when Over the Rhine Community Housing purchased this piece of property?
That is correct.
And can you describe for the board, I think it's important with this kind of project to describe how it's funded?
Certainly. So our main source of funds come from low-income housing tax credits. We will also put in additional owner equity and home funds. So it's important for these projects to receive these tax credit and home funds, because making the rent affordable to folks making, in this case, less than 30% of area median income, I would not support any debt service on the project.
So can you tell the board why we need the variances and, well, the density and setback variances in order to make this project work?
Certainly. So I'll kind of continue on with my last statement. So the need for the variances are twofold: on the operation of the building and on the cost of constructing the building. So as I said, the project is financed through those low-income housing tax credits as administered by the Ohio Housing Finance Agency. And this source is one of the only sources that is available currently to develop affordable housing in the state. And they require, quite responsibly, that the rents that are charged are able to support the cost of operating the project. And so we put together those operating costs based on our over 40 years of experience owning and operating affordable housing in the neighborhood. And that led us to develop an operating budget that cover traditional items such as utilities, insurance, but in this case also includes 24-hour staffing at the project. And so in order to cover these operational costs, we need to generate rental income from a minimum of 44 units. And then on the construction cost side, it's very similar. The cost of a foundation, of a roof, of an elevator, electric service, sewer tap, et cetera, those are all fixed, no matter how many units we provide. And so it's necessary for us to provide, to spread the cost of these over the greatest number of units possible.
And why would you need to include services and 24-hour personnel on the property?
So we want to just ensure the security of the building and make sure that it's well run and operated.
And why are services important to be available to the residents of this building?
So the residents are folks who have experienced long-term homelessness. And so with that typically come a variety of issues. And so including mental health or substance use disorder. And so with those disabilities, we like to provide an option for those residents to be able to seek services at any time.
But these are not required, is that correct?
They are not required.
Are you familiar with the existing zoning on the property?
I am, yes.
And under the existing zoning, how many units would be allowed by right?
14 units.
And how many units are you proposing?
We are proposing 44 units.
And what's the lot area per unit you're seeking?
So the lot area per unit we're seeking is 227 square feet per unit. I would like to note that that is not the size of the unit proposing. That often gets misunderstood. The unit sizes will be between 450 square feet and 611 square feet.
And what is the unit mix? Are they all one-bedroom units?
So 37 of the units will be efficiencies and 7 of the units will be one bedrooms.
And how many people do you anticipate will reside in each unit?
One person will reside in each unit.
So how many people will be living in this building?
44 will be.
And how many people could live in a building that contained 14 units as is permitted by right?
So I believe the staff report correctly notes that we would be permitted to have up to 70 occupants by right.
So the population density of this property as proposed will be significantly less than what is allowed by right. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Now, we want to make sure that we provide a context for this new construction in the neighborhood. Are there apartment buildings with similar setbacks and densities in this Mohawk area or in Over the Rhine generally that you're aware of?
Yes, there's quite a few. Again, the staff has noted. One or two very near the project are Griffin Apartments, which is less than 1/10 of a mile away. That project has 32 units, one bedroom, 3 3-bedrooms, and 28 2-bedrooms. So that has
We lost you there. Mr. Eilerman?
And I think you froze up.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I apologize about that. Where did I cut off?
Let me just re-ask the question so we can put this on the record. Are there, to your knowledge, apartment buildings with similar setbacks and densities in the Mohawk area and elsewhere in Over the Rhine? Like you got caught off again, Ben. Oh. Pardon us, Mr. Chairman. I think he's probably trying to leave and come back.
All right, I am currently under Mary Rivers screen name. I apologize about that.
Sandra, is that okay?
Yes, it's fine.
Okay.
All right. So,
all right. Sorry, let me re-ask the question, Ben. We'll reset here. Are you familiar or do you have knowledge of apartment buildings with similar setbacks and densities in the Mohawk area and in Over the Rhine generally?
yes, so Griffin Apartments which is less than 1/10 of a mile away, has 32 units, one bedroom. Excuse me, my notes are not in front of me, but one bedroom, and then it has several 3 bedrooms, and I believe 28 2 bedrooms, and for a total of 66 units. And then Logan Towers has 63 units, and those are less than 1/10 of a mile away as well. In addition to that, there are really countless numbers of buildings in the Over the Rhine neighborhood that have similar densities, as was noted in the staff report.
But this building, to your knowledge, is not out of character with surrounding apartment buildings in Over the Rhine, right?
It is not out of character, correct?
And would these variances change the essential character of Over the Rhine if granted?
No.
And let me talk about, I know there's been extensive community engagement. Can you describe for the board your community engagement efforts around this project?
Certainly. We have met with, we've met with the community a whole host of times, and we've reached out to many people throughout this process. So we started to engage community council prior to our original application to this board. So we met with the Community Council Executive Committee. We also met with the Economic Development and Housing Committee. After this item was tabled, we continued to meet with the Economic ED&H Committee and full Community Council, meeting with them a total of 8 times. We also toured, we offered tours and toured several people through our projects, explaining how this will work. And we reached out to several folks who are opposed to this, offering to meet them and answer their questions. Unfortunately, they did not take us up on that.
Okay. And if you could explain how these variances would help advance the neighborhoods and the city's goals for creating more affordable housing.
Sure. So I believe everyone should be well aware that this city is in desperate need of affordable housing. This project will provide much needed units to those at the very neediest portion of our community, where the need for housing is most profound.
Thank you, Mr. Eilerman. You'll be around for additional questions if we need them later. Is that correct?
I will do my best.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I have for Mr. Eilerman.
Sorry, Mr. Suter, if I may interject, I just wanted to establish housekeeping. I know that the rules of procedure allow for cross-examination of an applicant immediately following their testimony. I wanted to put the question to, I know there's an opposing attorney, Chris Finney here. I wanted to put the question to him whether he wished to cross-examine Mr. Eilerman at this moment in time, or to allow for your next witness.
This is Chris Finney. Chairman Voss, we have both some procedural matters that we want to put into the record, or motions we want to make. We have opening statement, and then we have cross-examination. I can wait till the end of the applicant's presentation of all of his witnesses to do that. I can do them one at a time, whatever pleases the board.
I would like to give you the opportunity to cross-examine as we go through witnesses. And then once they've completed their presentation, give you an opportunity to do a clean presentation.
Very good. Thank you very much. Then I shall do cross-examination now. Is that right?
Yes.
Can I jump in here real quick? This is Attorney Jeff Nye. I don't have any questions for Mr. Eilerman, but I did want to question staff. I didn't know that was the opportunity to do it. After Chris questions been, maybe we can come back and I can question staff and then we can move on with additional witnesses.
Jeff, this is Charles. Staff isn't available for cross-examination.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Finney, do you want to go ahead with your cross-examine Mr. Eilerman?
Sure, thank you. I think while I do that, my associate Jessica Gibson's going to pull up some of the exhibits. So hopefully that'll be helpful. But on the plan, can you pull up the plan, Jessica? Well, actually, while she's doing that, let me ask you a few other questions. Is this proposal one that provides a program of therapy, counseling, or training for the residential occupants?
There is that voluntary option, yes.
Well, that's not a question of what the tenants will do. I'm asking, will they be offered to the tenants in this building?
Yes.
Okay. And is the owner of the building, will the owner of the building be a licensed organization, or the operator of the building be a licensed organization authorized by a governmental authority?
No.
There's no licensure that's needed of any type for you to operate this type of facility?
No.
Okay. And are the residents those who are recuperating from the effects of drug or alcohol?
Some maybe.
Why don't you explain what you mean by that?
Just as we host a variety of residents in all our properties, we're unsure of the exact composition of the residents of this building, but certainly many in our community experience recovery from addictions.
Well, not just many in our community, but the majority of your residents are anticipated to be those recovering from addiction. Is that correct?
I think we anticipate we will have residents that will be recovering from addiction.
Mr. Chairman, I'd ask you to direct him to answer the question that was asked.
Do you understand the question, Mr. Eilerman?
I can't speculate on who will occupy a building that's not occupied.
I'm going to object to this line of questioning as being irrelevant. The use of the building is not at issue here. That issue's already been determined. Mr. Finney or whoever he represents, which is unclear still, does not fail to make any appeal of the city's decision on the use of the property. It is not an issue before this board and hereby irrelevant.
Your Honor, or Mr. Chairman, under the standards for setback for the variances sought, the first standard is that the proposed work conforms to the underlying zone district and is in harmony with the general purposes and the intent of the Cincinnati Zoning Code and Land Development Code. So I'm exploring that determination actually by Mr. Owens that was not subject to any public hearing, was not subject to any public notice, that in fact this was congregate housing.
Yeah, that was the decision.
The decision, and it's wrong. And we want to explore that on the record for purposes of preserving our appeal or even for your all's consideration.
And Mr. Chairman, it's not appropriate for your consideration here because it's not at issue. That decision is made by a staff member of the city of Cincinnati, not by this board. And there's been no appeal filed. This is not an appeal hearing of that. There's no proper appeal. The time has passed. So preserving a record relative to that issue is not necessary here. Is irrelevant. So I don't think we should spend our time on this. We should talk about the variances and talk about the certificate of appropriateness. We have plenty to talk about without getting sidetracked on an irrelevant issue.
Asked about the.
I would point out that we asked about the procedures at the preliminary hearing just 2 weeks ago, and we're told that the appeal period for that has not lapsed, which of course it hasn't, since nobody received any notice and there was no public input on that. But in any event, it is one of the factors that needs to be determined by the board. It's not that your decisions aren't made in a vacuum. The very first factor under item A is the proposed work conforms to the underlying zone district regulations and is in harmony with the general purposes and intent of the Cincinnati zoning code.
And Mr. Chairman, since this is congregate housing and the city of Cincinnati has made that decision, it does comply, the use complies with the zoning code. And it's not an issue before this board. We should move on to the variances and to the COA. Thank you.
All right. I'm going to move that we move into private session because I'd like to discuss this with the staff attorney and not step on a landmine that I can avoid. Do I have a second to move into private session?
I'll second.
All right. Ms. McKenzie?
Aye.
Mr. Weiss?
Aye.
Mr. Zelasco?
Aye.
Mr. Sunderman?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. We're going into private session. I have a couple things I need to discuss with council and the board before we continue. We'll be back as quickly as we can. Cassandra will put everybody in a waiting room. Cassandra, when you have us clear, let me know.
Okay, and then to everybody that's watching on YouTube, they'll just need to refresh their browser for when the board returns.
Okay.